Welcome to the live stream. Today's topic will be the three wise men. I will be reading a text based on the Desire of Ages, chapter 6, and Matthew, chapter 2. Let's get into it. So, today I'd like to talk about a remarkable group of people found in the Bible, the wise men from the East. Their story is recorded in Matthew chapter 2, but deeper lessons behind their journey reveal powerful truths for all who are seeking God today. Their story begins with these familiar words. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. Matthew 2, verses 1 to 2. These men traveled hundreds of kilometers, crossing deserts and mountains, not to gain wealth, fame, or power, but simply to find Jesus. Their journey teaches us three important lessons. God reveals himself to sincere seekers. Pride can blind people to truth. True worship requires giving our hearts to Christ. Let us consider each of these lessons. Let's begin with the first one, which is God reveals himself to sincere seekers. The wise men were not Jews, they were Gentiles living far from Jerusalem. Yet they were students of nature, students of prophecy, and students of truth. While many people around them were content with traditions and superstition, these men genuinely desired to know God. As they studied the heavens, they noticed an unusual star. But God did not simply give them a sign in the sky, He also led them to the scriptures. This is important. God often uses different means to draw people to Himself. He may use circumstances, nature, experiences, or people. But ultimately, He directs us to His word. The wise men responded to the light they had received. And because they followed that light, God gave them more light. This principle is still true today. Jesus said, If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. John 7, verse 17. When a person sincerely wants truth, God will guide that person. Throughout history, people have found God in unexpected places. Some have discovered Him while reading the Bible for the first time. Others through a conversation, a sermon, a book, or a personal crisis. God is constantly reaching out to humanity. The question is not whether God is speaking. The question is whether we are listening. The wise men listened. They obeyed. And because they obeyed, they found Jesus. The second point, God can reach anyone. One of the most beautiful parts of this story is that God chose Gentiles to be among the first people to honor his son. Think about that. The Messiah had come to Israel, the prophecies had been given to Israel, the temple was in Israel, and the priests, too, were in Israel. Yet some of the first worshippers of Christ came from another nation. Why? Because they were willing to receive the light God had given them. This reveals something wonderful about God's character. God is not interested in nationality, social status, education, or background. He is looking for hearts that are willing to receive truth. The wise men were foreigners. The shepherds were poor laborers. Yet both groups were welcomed by heaven. This reminds us that salvation is for everyone. Jesus came not merely for one nation, but for the entire world. As Isaiah prophesied, he would be, and he said, "It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth." Isaiah 49, verse 6. No one is too far away. No one is beyond God's reach. No matter where a person lives or what their background may be, God is able to guide sincere seekers to himself. The third point, the danger of spiritual pride. Now let us compare the wise men with the religious leaders in Jerusalem. The contrast is striking. The wise men traveled great distances searching for Christ. The priests lived only a few kilometers away from Bethlehem. The wise men were eager to worship. The priests, they were indifferent. The wise men had limited knowledge. The priests possessed the scriptures. Yet the wise men found Jesus, while the religious leaders remained where they were. Why? Because pride had blinded them. When the wise men asked about the newborn king, the priests knew exactly where the Messiah would be born. They quoted the prophecy immediately. And they said unto him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet." Matthew 2, verse 5. They had information, but they lacked faith. They knew the prophecy, but they had no desire to see whether it had been fulfilled. How tragic. They were closer geographically to Jesus than the wise men, yet spiritually they were much farther away. This teaches us an important lesson. Knowledge alone does not save. Religious activity alone does not save. Church attendance alone does not save. A person can know many Bible verses and still miss Jesus. The priests had truth in their minds, but not in their hearts. The wise men had less knowledge, but they acted upon what they knew. And because they acted, God led them further. Pride closed the door for the religious leaders. Humility opened the door for the wise men. This remains true today. God can reach and teach a humble learner, but pride prevents spiritual growth. Whenever we think we already know everything, we stop listening. Whenever we become unwilling to be corrected, we stop growing. The wise men teach us the value of remaining teachable before God. Then there is the fourth point. Faith continues even when circumstances are confusing. Imagine the disappointment of the wise men when they arrived in Jerusalem. They expected excitement. Surely everyone would be celebrating the birth of the Messiah. Instead, they found confusion, indifference, and hostility. No one seemed interested. Even worse, the star disappeared from sight. Their expectations were shattered. Yet they did not turn back. They continued searching. And this is yet another lesson for us. Faith is not merely believing when everything makes sense. Faith continues trusting God even when circumstances seem confusing. Sometimes believers experience moments when God appears silent. Prayers seem unanswered. The path ahead seems unclear. Expectations are disappointed, yet God is still leading. The wise men kept moving forward, and at the right moment, the star appeared again. Many people give up too soon, but God often rewards perseverance. The wise men continued seeking, and because they continued seeking, they eventually found the Savior. The fifth point. True worship recognizes Jesus for who he is. When the wise men finally arrived in Bethlehem, what did they find? Not a palace, not a throne, not an army, not royal servants. Instead, they found a humble house, a young child, and simple parents. From a worldly perspective, there was nothing impressive about the scene. Yet, they recognized something others failed to see. They recognized the presence of divinity. They fell down and worshipped him. Their faith was extraordinary. Most people would have looked at the humble surroundings and concluded they had made a mistake. But the wise men saw beyond appearances. And this is what true faith does. Faith sees what others cannot see. Faith recognizes God's work, even when it comes in unexpected ways. The greatest miracle in Bethlehem was not the star. It was that God Himself had become a man. The Creator had entered His creation. The King of Kings had come in humility. And the wise men worshipped Him. Point number 6. Giving our best to Jesus. The wise men did not come empty-handed. They brought gifts: gold, frankincense, myrrh. These were valuable treasures. They offered the very best they possessed. But the most important gift was not the gold, frankincense, or myrrh. The most important gift was themselves. Before they presented their treasures, they bowed in worship. They first gave their hearts. This is the essence of true worship. God is not primarily seeking our money, talents, or possessions. He desires our hearts. When He has our hearts, everything else follows naturally. Our time becomes His, our abilities become His, our resources become His, our lives become His. The wise men teach us that worship always involves surrender. They came seeking a king, and when they found him, they placed everything at his feet. Point number 7. God's plans cannot be defeated. The story also reminds us that God's purposes cannot be destroyed. King Herod tried to eliminate Jesus. He used deception, he used political power, he used violence, yet he failed. God protected his son. Warnings were given. Joseph obeyed. The family escaped to Egypt. And Herod's plans came to nothing. Throughout history, many have tried to oppose God's work. Empires have risen and fallen. Persecution has come and gone. Critics have attacked the Bible. Yet, God's purposes continue forward. The same God who protected the infant Jesus is still guiding his work today. Nothing can prevent the fulfillment of God's plans. This gives believers confidence. No matter how dark the world becomes, God remains in control. Now we come to the conclusions. The story of the wise men is far more than just a Bible story. It is the story of every sincere seeker. God gave them light. They followed it. God gave them more light. They persevered, and they found Jesus. Along the way, they teach us timeless lessons. God reveals himself to sincere seekers. Humility opens the door to truth. Pride closes the door to spiritual understanding. True worship recognizes Jesus for who he is. Genuine worship involves giving our hearts completely to him. The question for each of us today is the same question that faced the wise men. What will we do with the light God has given us? Will we ignore it like the priests? Will we oppose it like Herod? Or will we follow it like the wise men? May we be willing to seek Christ with the same determination, the same and the same faith. And may we one day stand before him, not admirers, but as true worshippers. Thank you.